We now move on to chapter 10. Chapter 10 is quite a short chapter, but it's so intriguing. It's typical of God, Jesus, that they keep wanting to comfort their dear ones, the people of God who are, particularly in the last days, feeling such need of comfort of God and reassurance in difficult times. And so we go into chapter 10, and I call it Two Scrolls and Two Men with a Message from God to Israel. Because here again, you get scripture and scripture. It's like they confirm each other. And remember, John was witnessing all this. This was happening to him. He was writing it down. But remember the impact on John all the time. And when he hears this particular chapter, which I'm going to read now, just look for the spot, which perhaps if you're fairly well read in the Bible, you will recognize something from the Old Testament. So let me read it now. And I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, wrapped in a cloud, with a rainbow over his head, his face like the sun, and his legs like pillars of fire. He held a little scroll open in his hand. Setting his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land, he gave a great shout, like a lion roaring. And when he shouted, the seven thunders sounded. I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying, "Seal up what the seven thunders have said, and do not write it down." Then the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and the land raised his right hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and what is in it, and the earth and what is in it, and the sea and what is in it. There will be no more delay, but in the days when the seventh angel is to blow his trumpet, the mystery of God will be fulfilled, as he announced to his servants, the prophets. Then the voice that I had heard from heaven spoke to me again, saying, "Go, take the scroll that is open in the hand of the angel who's standing on the sea and the land." So I went to the angel and told him to give me the little scroll. And he said to me, "Take it and eat it. It will be bitter in your stomach, but sweet as honey in your mouth." So I took the little scroll from the hand of the angel and ate it. And it was sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I'd eaten it, my stomach was made bitter. Then they said to me, "You must prophesy again about many peoples and nations and languages and kings." That was said to John. Let me repeat that. You must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings. What a stupendous statement for a mere 90-year-old mortal to hear. And I want you to think about John, just as he was, an old man, a disciple of Jesus in the past, a man chosen by Jesus to write this amazing book. And he's told he has yet got work to do for God. That would be pretty special, wouldn't it? Yes, now just to finish this session, let us think about who those characters might have been. Who did John think of? Because Jewish men were pretty well versed in Scripture. And he must have been struck by several of the clues as to who we're talking about. For one thing, he would certainly see Jesus was involved in this very much. But he would be intrigued until he suddenly thought, yes, of course, Ezekiel, way back in the Old Testament. I'll just read you a little bit about Ezekiel, which is a parallel passage to what we've just read. And this is it. But you, mortal, Ezekiel, hear what I say to you. Do not be rebellious like that rebellious house. Talking of Israel. Open your mouth and eat what I've given you. And I looked, and a hand was stretched out to me, and a written scroll was in it. He spread it before me. It had writing on the front and on the back, and written on it were words of lamentation and mourning and woe. He said to me, O mortal, eat what is offered to you. Eat this scroll and go and speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat. And he said, mortal, eat this scroll that I give you and fill your stomach with it. I ate it, and in my mouth it was as sweet as honey. Now, that's the end of the quote from Ezekiel, but it is so similar, isn't it? So, of course, John was reminded of that. Let me just, in a few words, say what it was Ezekiel had to do. God was so concerned about his nation, Israel, as he nearly always was, because they turned away from him so easily. They needed bringing back. He needed a prophet to go out to them. And that's what this scroll represented. It's taking into his very being, in a wonderful symbolic way, the words of God for Israel. So that raises the question, how about John? John, who is also told to eat a scroll, and it is sweet in his mouth, and it actually adds the bit, and it was bitter in his stomach. So it wasn't an easy experience. And then he's given this last verse of chapter 10. Have a look at it when you've got time. And he's told, you, John, must prophesy about many peoples and nations and languages and kings. Could there be an implication there that John was also going to go to his own nation? Or it could have been even wider than that in the case of John. But he was going to somebody, some group of people, some maybe very massive group of people, because he had a message from God which was represented by that little scroll with the writing on it. Isn't it intriguing? Isn't it interesting? And let's just think about that as we finish this chapter 10, because I'm fascinated by that phrase. And next time we'll be thinking about something completely different, but just as thrilling, just as interesting.